So Arabeschi di Latte is, let's say, my project that, as I said, started in Florence in 2001. And it came, I started it while I was still studying. I was still a student in Florence, studying architecture. And the idea was to work around food, but from a design and architect perspective. And what this could mean at the time was really unknown. It's something that really, the association between food and design was something really not defined. And now it's under definition. And I have to say in the last 10 years and moreover in the last 5 years, I mean, there's a lot of practice has started to combine these subjects. But when we started, the idea that some architects started working with food was something really unexpected and very niche. So how we have been defined Arabeschi di Latte, it was always like a juxtaposition of words, because it was a bit of food, it was event, design, art, research, it was a mix of that. Now, I mean, all over, after 20 years, I think we have defined a bit better what we are doing as Arabeschi di Latte. And so the idea is to use food as a social tool to break barriers and use interaction as an opportunity as a form of communication and reflection for people who is involved. Then we had design project where we want to they want to use it as an opportunity to reconsider food, habits, system, culture. So looking at food as not like just a 4-letter words, but like a big word where there's a lot of things to explore. And then what we are doing is like creating experience, so where everything comes together from the space, the details, the food itself, and the experience becomes like an immersive one. And the importance of nature has always been part, in a way, of the practice, and definitely has become stronger and stronger all over the years and recently. So now after so many years, I found a definition that I've been using recently, is designing conviviality, because most of the time I've been defined food design, food artist, food architecture of food. All over the years, a lot of definition, but in a way, I couldn't recognize myself in none of those. Designing conviviality, I think, in a way, gives a bit more the complexity of the approach and the nuance of the approach. So now I've been using this, but how do I got here? And I don't know if it's because Marco has invited me, but everything started in Florence. So I wanted to show something really back in the days, images, just to give you an idea where it started and how it really was a kind of student project when it became. And it started in Florence, and I like to show this image because it's sort of guide where you have these post-it, that in a way they're energy addiction to the city, because the city of Florence is a small one, and although it has the Italian, let's say, conviviality background, but still is a quite difficult cities for interacting. And so the idea was to create a series of occasions where people could gather in the city and using food as a tool to facilitate gatherings among friends, but also strangers. So this is where everything began, and especially a first food events. This is how we decided to call at the time. It was a picnic on the hills of Florence for an art gallery. And now, I mean, it seems something very usual, like a picnic with using the food crate from the market. But I can assure you, in Florence 2001, that was a kind of a very new thing. And the picnic, it was really the first project as Arabeschi di Latte done for this gallery I was working for, and then it became a urban gatherings for a few years for the city itself. I don't know if Marco has ever participated, but it was for the 24th of June that is the patrons of Florence, and it was on the River Arno to see the fireworks they do that night. So this first gathering was the beginning a series of social situations, like occasions where we use food to bring people together. And we started especially for exhibitions. So these were very old projects, like really we are talking about a life ago. And it was this a communal picnic, couscous, or a series of mm, uh, unusual way of serving food in the garden, or trees that will become in the platform for discovering an forgotten fruit. So, I mean, I've done a lot of those. These are literally just few images from that years. And then we start when we realized that it was becoming a sort of job. So we start doing these gatherings, these occasions, also in international context. So no more just Florence and the Contemporary Art Gallery in Florence, but also in London, in Tokyo. And so we travel in different parts of the world, organizing these little events. They most of the time were part of Design Week or Fashion Week. So occasions where we could create this gathering in unexpected place. So it was not about food as a catering. We'd never been a catering. We always food as more like the artists from the 90s were using it as a relational tool. So this was, for example, Bramble Cafe in London. It was all about mushrooms, or this pastificio, so a sort of pasta workshop in a small gallery in Japan, in Harajuku, where people were there not to learn how to make pasta, but was more an occasion to bring people together and create a platform for communicating and to interact. So the purpose was not like a cooking class, but was more like to facilitate the communication. And I have to say, this, after 20 years, is still my favorite project. And the Pastificio was itinerant one. We presented in London, Berlin, and many other places. Or this in London, Egg Open Source. It was all about eggs and an open source platform. And in all these projects, there were a series of customized objects that sometimes I laugh when I look at them, because now, most of the time, they has become products that they are sold, like, I don't know, customizing a little fork with a disposable fork with color, or adding elements to a stick. But we were all making by hand. So it was kind of very DIY and intentionally DIY and naive, because that was also part of our statement. Like, even if we were considering ourselves designer, but we wanted to maintain this connection with this art crafty and naive approach to this. And so these are images from the first 10 years of the practice, and an event that we made to to give away all our archive, because after 10 years we thought that we had to change, and all these tools that we have created for these events were redundant, and we wanted to still keep the idea of the connection with food, but exploring different aspects. So we organized these events where everybody could win a lucky bag full of these tools. And so our archive was kind of given away for a fresh start for the 10 years after. One thing we kept from these 10 years, and is the idea of interaction, because that is really the reason why, as trained as an architect, I really wanted to work with food. It was because it's really a tool that can facilitate an interaction and can create connection among people. And so this is the only object that, in a way, has been kept from the first 10 years, that is called the Friendship Cup, or Grolla. That is an object from the north of Italy, and is an object in itself that has the idea of sharing, because you can drink from each beak and pass to the person next to you. And so it really includes a lot of the elements that were part of the practice. So the idea of sharing, the idea of using interaction, the idea of food as something that brings people together, the idea of the connection with the artisanal practice, and moreover also the idea of rituals, because I think this has been another key word for the practice. And so starting from this, the idea of interaction became a bit of an obsession with a lot of projects where was even made clear there was an interactive moment. So this, for example, was a BQ interactive dinner that is kind of replicating the idea of a market where people can take different food from different stalls, and they can go in a communal table to prepare their own food with simple tools, like recovering the pleasure of touching food or making food by hands. And as I said, it's never a cooking class, but it's never been a cooking class, but more like an occasion for gathering. And so people were like getting around this communal table, and they were preparing their own, using like mortars, graters, and you had done this in different museums and galleries. These images, for example, are the one in Belgium, in Mons. And these interactive spaces, there were an occasion also to transform the spaces. That is also the connection that I always felt was part of the connection with the background of what I've been studying for years. That was architecture. And for example, in this case, it was a pasterbarium where in the Designhuis in Eindhoven, people were preparing their own pasta. They were making their own pasta with different tools and with a layer, with additional layers. There was the storytelling around herbs that was connected to the pasta elements. And so again, it was like a social space inside a space where at the time you would not expect to have this moment dedicated to food. And here you see that we use, of course, the classic tools from pasta. That was also, in a way, part of the practice, the idea of reusing traditional elements, but bringing out of context and giving it maybe a new status of design object, like this bigolaro, that is tools to make bigoli, is a pasta from north of Italy. And here are the images from Pasterbarium. Or in this case, it was Archeomil. It was more reflecting about the future of food and looking at the past. So it was like baking the past to make the future. And in this interactive installation, in Rotterdam, people were like could choose among different plants that traditionally has been used to make bread, including tifa, that is a Kattalmarsch, this plant that grows next to canal, that is the first plant that has been tracked to be used for making bread in prehistorical time. And the idea was really to recreate this connection with the matter, with the primitive matter, but also to understand how sometimes we take for granted the making of food, like the flour we just buy from supermarket and we find it on the shelf. And in this case, people had to make their own flour if they wanted to participate in the installation. So they choose a plant, they grind it with a stone or manual mill, and they make their own flour, and then they could prepare their own pancakes. So you see, this was tifa, these plants that you crush the fibers of the plants to obtain this sort of flour. And as you can see, the interaction in itself is very simple, very low tech, but this has also been an important part of the way we've been working with food. It's more like it's not, as I said, a cooking class, so it doesn't matter. It don't even cook. It's like just the people that interact with the food. So it's important that it's simple. Or this is a more recent one, but still the idea of the interaction was present. And in cases, Wonder Bread, the project realized for ICAL, the school in Lausanne. And in this case, I work with the students like 10 years before with the pasta. In this case, we work with bread, and we use stale bread to create different objects from decorative or functional. And then we built up together an event based on the use of bread, and each group has to create a storytelling around it. And then they had to create the dinner itself. So the students, Ekale is a beautiful school, so they are so lucky. They also have a canteen, and so the student itself prepare all the things for the dinner. But again, it was, for me, what it was important, it was a reflection on how even bread, that is such a staple in the diets of so many countries, can become the tools for say something and with a message. Here is another, let's say, interactive space that we had designed here in London at Selfridges, and it was a water bar. And in this case, Arabeschi was asked to design a water bar to sensibilize people about the use of single plastic bottles, so to avoid the use of single plastic bottles. And in this case, again, we look at rituals and tradition, and we took the inspiration from the Italian terme. If you see on the left, this is an image from the Italian terme of Chianciano. And the ritual there was that people was going there to cure themselves drinking water by the glass. So they were the mescitrici, these women dressed in yellow. They were serving water from the source. And of course, at Selfridges, we didn't discover a source at the Selfridges. It would have been nice, but so we used filtered water. But the bar was functioning like a proper thermal bar, so people would go there and they drink water by the glass. And the purpose of this was to create a simple new rituals around drinking water. So drinking water by the glass is a simple thing, but to integrate in the everyday life, to recover that idea that is a ritual that should be part of our daily life, was the point of the cafe, of the bar, sorry. And all around the counter, there was this taps inspired by the thermal one. And there was a menu with some ingredients that could help to filter water, since the water, as I said, was a filter one, was not from a proper source. And in the space, there was also a collection of water bottles, water jars, water containers, to make people realize how we are so used to see water in plastic, but is a relatively recent thing. And in the past, water smelling terracotta or gourd. So it was really a small collection of water jars to make this evident. And the theme of water has become quite recurrent in the last few years. And for example, this is another project where water was the element, and the reflection here was focused on filter. And it was a project that was exhibited inside Broken Nature at Triennale Milano, and another water exhibition at Grand Journaux in Belgium. So it was an installation about simple method to filter water. And so there was this jar, very intentionally, very common one. And then this lid that each one were representing different way of filtering water, including moringa seeds. That is one of the most powerful filter. They are the seeds of these moringa trees that grows mainly in Central America. It's the most powerful natural water filter, pinchotan charcoal, clay, cilantro, coriander, because that is like the important thing of simple water filters. They needs to be something that it's easy to source and they are available, because of course the drinking water problem is mainly in countries where there's a lot of difficulties also from economic point of view, even though the problem of water, I mean, is growing also in other places. But let's say technically the water filter, I'm simplifying here, a good water filter should be something very simple and effective from economic point of view. And cilantro and coriander, of course, if you think of Mexico or Central America, is a plant that grows wild and is very common and easy to find, and is a very powerful water filter. Again, here it was a research, and food, in this case was water, is just a tool to create a connection with people, but also to make people increase their awareness about a topic that is pivotal in our daily life. And so apart from the display, there was also an interactive part where people could taste this water, and they were using this cup that are the Indian cup you normally use for chai, because it's a good solution for a more sustainable disposable cup, because they destroy them and then remake it with the clay. So also the choice of the tools was is a statement. And here it was a performance at the V&A during Friday late. Of course, food, I'm showing different way of using food, and I specify again that we use food in many times, but we don't cook. And I say that because for me, as a designer, it's very important, because sometimes my practice is confused with the catering, but it's not. We work with catering to create sometimes events. So that is the commercial part. So we have seen more like a research, more design-oriented project, and then there is a commercial part that is more about occasion to communicate for brands. And this is a niche that we built slowly, because at the beginning nobody, could see the potential of this. Now I think every brand is considering the catering moment as an occasion to communicate. So over years we have worked so many brands, but I think the idea of using food as a tool to communicate comes in the end from the futurists that probably, in a way, they were the first food designer. They were the very first that imagined food as an opportunity to investigate other topics, to make statements, and to say something in the creative world. And so here it was an homage to them for a magazine, and it was a series of invented, completely crazy cocktails, but inspired by the futurist moment. And here a series of events where, as I said, inspired a bit by the futurist. Again, I'm simplifying. It's we produce these events for different brands. In this case, was a brand of tools. So for the anniversary, we played with the tools itself. So the catering prepared the food, but they were serving it using the tools of the brand itself. And in this case, for New York Times Tea Magazine, we created this totem, and totem then they became very popular as an homage to the Memphis movement that was celebrated on the issue of Tea Magazine during the Design Week in Milan. And he was, of course, in the location, usual location for Salone, that is Villa Necchi. And so this Memphis-inspired totem was like the main gathering point. And then the waiters of the catering were serving food using different tools that we have designed for the occasion, still making an homage of the fun and the spirit of the Memphis movement. Or this is for Fendi, where again we play with totem, creating different sculpture where people and different station with different Tuscan food. Or Fendi again, where instead was inspired by the sunburn of the and so all the food was in a way related to oxidation and the strong effect of the sun. Or this for Serpentine Gallery, Barberries, where it's all about a color. So every time is an element, a different element that we are asked to communicate, and then we find a way to translate it in a food moment. So we work with the brand from the brief perspective, and then we work with catering, production for then to realize it, that it becomes like a real event that people can participate. And in a lot of this project, a recurrent theme has been like food and time. So like water, that has been a subject explored a lot, interaction, rituality. I think also this strong bond that there is between food and time has inspired us many times. And here are a series of projects, but could be many others. I think it's kind of a constant because, of course, there is, as I said, is a strong bond between food and time. And in this case, it's a series of midnight dinner. There was a conceptual installation for Design Week, all inspired by food that is made at night. So has a connection on the darkest side of nature, like these beautiful artichokes. That is a traditional recipe from Sicily, where the artichoke outside is completely burned because they are like completely burned outside. But if you peel the leaves, you take off the leaves, inside there is a delicious core. And so this metaphorically has always been, I think is quite poetic, the idea of discovering the core, the beauty of something. And why I mentioned these artichokes, because this is just one of the example of how we like also to search for the poetic element, the storytelling, even inside a simple ingredient or a simple preparation like these traditional Sicilian artichokes. So most of the times, what we include in these events or these gatherings or installation, workshops, comes from the tradition. It's just brought in a different context. Here are images from this series of midnight dinner, where another element that's part of, let's say, feature of Arabeschi has been the uniforms. Has always been very important because we always play with this idea of the performance and transforming the waiters in a sort of performance that can enhance the message behind it. Another project around time, where it was inspired by the herb blue and everything that is changing with the time passing. And so every tools was changing colors while time passing, because these food were all blue and purple, and so they were dyeing the serving tools itself. Or this, it was a series of visual images for Gagana, where we were explicitly celebrate the time, like with an action. So dripping, fermenting, they're all expression of time. So we wanted to make it visible and celebrate the poetry behind that. Here, the time is more, let's say, from time, we pass more to materials. And another theme that we have investigated a lot is the relation with materiality. And so a while ago, we started this research that is called Edible Material Library, where in a way we search that food that looks like materials. So we play with that, like concrete and sugar, chocolate and wood, bread and stone. So it looks like presenting like the material like a the food like a materials. And we had done a lot of projects around this subject. And also it was part of an exhibition at Grand Journaux, this material library. And here instead it's the series of events related to this theme. And part of this research was also included in a publication. It was called Material Menu, designed for the culinary aesthetic, including this torteau fromagère, this burnt cake from France. The material, as I said, a bit like time, has been a theme that we explored a lot. And in this case, we really made evident this connection between materials and food making. So, for example, this is on the right, the one that looks like a sculpture on the wall. In the end, is a traditional way of making pancetta, bacon, and it's called pancetta steccata. And now it's done with just normal, just a simple piece of wood, but originally were made with branch. That was like pressing the meat. Or on the left, these anchovies that are pressed by stones and salt to be preserved. Or on top left, there is this amazing cheese. It really doesn't look like cheese. It's really like a piece of chalk, but inside there is cheese, and it's called toma mucciata. And it's again, it's a traditional product, but when I first discovered, I thought that this is amazing. It really looks like a stone, and nobody during the events was understanding what it was. They really thought, oh, maybe it's just for display. And then when we open it, the catering open it, people was really surprised. And again, it's looking for secret stories, not to add around it, and walks celebrated as one of the most intriguing material for preserving food, from cheese, of course, the most common, to eggs that were preserved in woks. And so there was a sort of performance where some of the food were dipped in the woks. Here it's the connection with the value, money. And considering food as a currency. So it was an installation done in Monte Carlo. And then I present you just a few other projects, and I've finished. I think we are on time. Yes, and introducing another theme is, of course, food and nature. I have already mentioned, talking about the midnight dinner, and this, and also about this materiality that has become an important subject. But there are projects where the connection with nature was made even more evident, like in this case, where a block of soil was the display for the food itself. And in this occasion, it was an exhibition of Courage Cross, and there was this long table, like a very monastic canteen with a simple food, and people could take their own directly from different stations. But we wanted to celebrate the connection, as I said, with the soil. And so all the ingredients were roots, and the importance of soil as the starting point of everything. And I mention it because we are working on a new project around this subject soon. So I like to remind myself there was already a project where soil was an important part. Or in this case, it was a fictionary pastry. So, I mean, were invented and not edible cakes, but made with plants that are the best one for phytoremediation. So again, if fictionary pastry during Design Week became the occasion to make people know the importance of regenerative agriculture and phytoremediation. That is not a new technique; is a technique that, I mean, was very popular, for example, in the 70s. And now there is a lot of attention to it because really, although we have done everything we could to ruin the life of plants can once again help us to clean what we have polluted and destroyed all over years of exploitation. And so, again, the occasion was this very familiar place, in a way, like a pastry shop, but to talk about something more important. And that is a recurrent subject again. So like in the water bar, it was, again, the interaction was very simple. The inspiration is coming from the beautiful thermal, but the goal was to sensibilize about a topic that especially at the time was 2015, I think, it was really an urgent matter. But it still is, because although we all have now flasks and jars, still now there are too many, and the problem has come a new one. And here adding images from the pastry shop at Alcova, Milan. And the last two projects is two workshops in Bois Boucher, this beautiful place in France where every year they invite designers to run workshops and you are immersed in nature. It's a really great platform. And I went there for 2 years. And this was one workshop about, the title was Drink and Think, so reflecting on different rituals. And the other one was Hungry Copy, where we wanted to recreate this connection with nature. So students use the nature itself to create their own installation. And this was possible because the location, it was quite magic one, and they used the water of the lake and on the river was so clean that they could be used to prepare this. For example, these are apple that they baked directly using the clay of the lake, or like you're gonna see in the short video, they even use the river to make caramel. last slide. I leave you with the manifesto. There was asked by the Zine to imagine the manifesto for the next 15 years of this my field. That, as I said, is a bit not defined field. It's kind of they have been calling food design, but I'm not super happy with that. And where I put literally on the table some topic that I feel that are important to imaging the way we consume, to imaging a new rituality where the title of the manifesto was The Beauty of Scarcity. I don't know if you have seen it, but in a way where the more frugal approach to the way we consume, the way we interact with food without losing the pleasure, the idea that is pleasure, because what is important about food is something very necessary, vital, but at the same time it has a lot of cultural implication, political implication. So as I said, it's not just a four-letter word. And so, yeah, I leave you with this manifesto that is something I'm still working on. I mean, the next project, at least the one that are more on the research side, they start from this manifesto, and now I'm trying to translate it in occasions, installations, workshops, but looking at this subject too as new thing to explore. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. That was incredible. Incredible.
Sorry, I've been messy when I present, but I hope you understood.
Yeah, so good. Very well. Look, and we can only imagine the taste. It was progress. I was just trying to imagine. No, it was super interesting.
I was going to say, I have a very basic question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to all the food afterwards?
Well, it's when there are events,
Yes.
is eaten. And because, as I said, when I work on events, I work with catering. So the food is produced like by the catering itself, so it's edible. And then during workshop, of course, there are some experiments. So if the question is more like about the waste, what I think is definitely the system of food as probably at point number one, the problem of waste. And that's why in my manifesto, I'm try to promote a different approach to scarcity, because even though I've been part of this celebration of abundance, I grew up in Florence, I live in London, so I'm part of the celebration of abundance, but I realized that it can't be like that anymore. But how can we still maintain the pleasure behind that? And so we need to recreate a different approach to how we see scarcity as an opportunity in a way. If the question has behind this, in general, for each project, from my point of view, I try my part to be the most sustainable I can. But then it could sound a bit just words, because of course I think it's very difficult to be sustainable, but in every aspect. But working on the way rituals can embrace, let's say, can facilitate the change of habit. That is what I've been trying to contribute to. That has been my contribution. So if sometimes with on the commercial side, so projects, let's say, that are for brands, for sure there have been some waste, but in the whole project, not the set, the occasion. If an occasion is a fashion show, of course, that definitely would be waste, no? So from my contribution, what I've done is that when I have the opportunity to bring something on the table to reflect and change something, it's through facilitating rituals that can help us to change our habit, because changing habits is very difficult. We all know, we all struggle every day with changing habits. And so sometimes we have to look at the past to maybe to change something, or we have to look at a simple approach. I don't know. That's so I make it like a large answer to a small question, but I thought that behind that it was this.
No, it was a good answer. It was to the latter. It was more so, it wasn't necessarily about the events and the food that was eaten. It was more around the food that's presented around it. So the answer was that it was a good one.
Hi, Francesca. Thank you very much for your presentation. You mentioned quite early on in your presentation that what drew you from architecture to food was the interaction that can happen around food. And obviously, from an architectural perspective, you know, internally, you're considering how people interact with the space. And obviously, from an internal perspective, you're considering how that space interacts with the environment that it sort of sits within. So as you were sort of talking through, I was wondering, at what point do you think about the interaction? Like, is it the interaction that almost derives the concept, or is it kind of like we sort of start with the food and the concept and then think about how the interaction becomes a part of that concept in a way?
It depends. From project to project, it's I don't have a rule. Sometimes it's the space itself that calls for a way to interact with it. Sometimes is, I don't know, the story of an ingredient that I don't know. I was fascinated by, as I said, the artichoke now, and then from there we build the interaction. Other times it's more like a topic that we feel the urgency to observe, to investigate, and then we say, okay, let's try to find something that can make people understand that in a simple way. And in a way, the most difficult part is always this process of simplifying, because interaction, when I say not digital interaction, I say low-tech interaction. But I guess I'm not very high-tech. I guess probably also digital interaction needs that, but it's the simplicity. You need to make it very kind of that people cannot avoid it. It's so simple that everyone feel that they can do it. Otherwise, it creates a barrier. It
also sounds, well, it sounded like and appeared through your presentation that actually a lot of what you're doing is obviously about the experience in the moment, but also the story that someone takes away and is kind of left with as well.
Well, thank you, because it's exactly what we would like to obtain. And like the connection with the space, you really express better than me what I wanted to say.
Okay. So, maybe it's English is my language.
It's very important, the memory, because it's what, of course, you have the joy of the moment, the magic moments, but then the memories or the message is something that can stay with you for a longer time. So yes, it's a lot also about this.
Thank you.
That's why we also like to play a lot with naive, with even with childish, sometimes, like the gnocchi bar. I don't know, for example, it was like a low table, because it put people in a different approach to the subject.
Well, there's lots of like adult therapy that is based around play, because you learn concepts and things through the act of play as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
you wanted to ask something.
Oh no, I mean I had a question, but my question I think you answered through James's question, which was in a simple way, what would you want your lasting sort of message to be within the sort of the art and design stuff that you create? Like, what's the core principle that you want people to take away each time?
Also, this one, it depends from project to project. So I think it's a mix of thinking and good memories. So yeah, I say it's a combination of the two questions before.
Sure.
You make the collage.
Yeah. What I thought was really interesting, actually, from just my own perspective going through that, was how you sort of, through your work, it quite a lot shifts the perspective of food itself. Like actually seeing food in a context that isn't just about complete consumption. There's a beauty, there's something to know or learn more there, and actually using it as a medium or a form. It felt really, really interesting. So there's not a specific question there. It's just actually looking at food as not just food, and actually it can do so much more, and that act can be so much more, which I thought was just really exciting and interesting to see, actually.
Thank you. And I like you said that also because this is one of the reasons I never liked the word food design, because now it's food, but not necessarily, it could be also something else, no? So it depends from what you want to explore. But food is very powerful, because like music, you know, you can speak to a larger audience, and everybody has an opinion around that. So it's, facilitated.
I've got a question actually regarding creative process, because obviously your works are, you know, so pleasing to see and beautiful. And obviously I can understand why back then, and probably even now, you consider yourself like a designer. I can understand that. And so I also understood the visual references that you shown. Maybe being Italian helped, but yeah, I did understand that. But I had a question, because I always think the food and music actually have this amazing power to transport you exactly to a moment. So I don't know, I would taste a specific dessert and I will remember exactly the first time I tasted it. It could even be like 30 years ago, it doesn't really matter. The food has that power. So my question is, what role in your references the food plays? If you ever start from the actual taste, if it's something you do, or where it comes in your process, that factor.
Since I mean, I've been trained as an architect, so, and as I said, I don't cook. I think more than the taste is sometimes more the most of the time it's the image and the gesture. So when I imagine something, a lot of the inspirational images comes from art or sculpture, or like very random Googling. It's visual association. So it's usually doesn't come from the taste. And this, I don't mean that I don't care about the taste, but it's more that it's not my purpose. Since I don't even cook it, what is part of the installation is not my purpose. So that's why I also like to collaborate with someone instead that is knowledge is about the taste. No? So I think working, for example, with a chef, for me, is inspiring. And I would prefer that chefs work with designer instead of trying to be designer themselves. Because designing is not just about the shape of something, while the risk is a bit like when, now I'm trying to make it too complicated, but it's a bit like when, it's also about the concept. So it's a bit like for artists, you know, when they think that artist is just someone who's, I don't know, is the romantic vision of the artist. Now there's one who's making the sculpture. the romantic can also be the artist is also conceptual. And what I would like to see is also the conceptual part. So it's unlikely I start from the taste, but also because the food itself in most of my projects tend to be very simple, very, I would say primordial, very, sometimes even traditional. So if I look at all the projects I've done, really very, very few times there was experimental on the food side. It was more like creating the different context for an ingredients, even the images that you see, that it might be that you think that is a strange food. In the end, the artichoke, they looks black, but is a traditional recipe. Or even since in that project was the black bread, but black bread itself is made with a natural ingredient that is squid ink or charcoal. But I liked the idea that that bread was looking mysterious. So then the food needs to be good. I'm not saying that. And this is what also has been a winning point of Arabeschi since the beginning. Because as an Italian, food needs to be good. And that's why I prefer to stay behind the project than in the kitchen, because probably it's better.
No, I understand. Thank you. I think that was super interesting. Yeah, thank you. Well, what can I say? Thank you, honestly. Thank you from all of us. It was super, super amazing to be in here. And obviously, come for a drink. We'll make sure it looks nice and it tastes
It tastes good.
Yeah.
good as well. But we're in it, so just come by whenever for a coffee, okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
you.
Have a nice evening.